Welcome to Come to Think of It. My name is Steve Nemerovski and I'm your host. In today's episode, we are interviewing Gary Tyler and discussing his new book, Stitching Freedom. The subtitle of the book is A True Story of Injustice, Defiance, and Hope in Angola Prison. In 1975, Gary was wrongly charged with murder, beaten, the victim of both legal and judicial malpractice, and sentenced to death without parole in the toughest prison in America. Among a long list of injustice, he was denied hearing status as a juvenile. At the time, he was the youngest prisoner on death row in the country. Yet, that he is now out of prison after 42 years is testament to a remarkable journey. Gary, welcome to Come to Think of It. Congratulations on the book.
Well, thank you. I appreciate being here.
And it's truly a remarkable journey, and we're going to do everything we can to help you sell a lot of books today because people need to know this story. But I was curious, you've really been out of jail for about 10 years. What made you decide to finally sit down and write the book?
Well, it really didn't so much started while I got out. While I was in prison, I did I had a diary that I was writing everything that happened in my life. I felt that it was important. But where I got the idea from was that this old show they used to call People's Court with Judge Wapner. And there was an episode where two guys had a verbal contract and one reneged on the other. And the resolution came on a guy who basically honored the contract, but the other guy that broke it, and Judge Wapner gave this guy an advice that next time you ever decide to do something with someone, put it on paper. You understand? Have a contract written down on paper. So something, it kind of like flicked a light in my head that, wait a minute, everything that's been happening to me is being reported in the newspaper, and I'm not speaking or writing anything down about what actually happening to me. I'm in prison. People are telling a story, but they're not telling the actual story about what I'm going through. So I decided to start writing the things that goes down in my life while I was in prison. And as time went on, you understand, it was a thing where I said, okay, if something ever happened to me, I want this to get out to my attorney where she could be able to do whatever she wants with it. But I want people to know what I was experiencing while I was in prison, because people really don't know what goes on behind the walls, but the individuals who live in there. So that's why I started about writing my life story while I was there.
Well, that's fantastic. I may have missed it. I don't remember in the book that you talked about having a diary. Did you? Is that in the book, or are you just telling me about it now?
Well, in the book, mainly it's it was notes that I kept and stuff like that. But mainly it was basically a diary.
Now, when people write books, they're often trying to reach an audience and maybe teach a lesson and get across important ideas that they want other people as a takeaway. Who do you think, what are your most important messages here? Who are you trying to reach, whether it's like young children or your family, or who's your main audience?
Well, I always felt that presentation matter, all right? And that my story have been told on many occasions, but it's never from my point of view. It's never from what I've experienced when I was in prison or my view when everything happened. And I feel, though, that from the time that it happened to me until now, that it was important that I share my story with, from people from all walks of life, for mainstream America, whether young, middle-aged, or old, because somewhere the life that I live, people will be able to identify, recognize, understand, things that happen in their lives, people that they may know, things like that, or how an individual in such dreadful situation how they can overcome those challenges in life. So, I wrote it in order, not only as a sense of awareness, but also as a means of education, as a tool, letting people know that no matter what you go through, that you can survive your ordeal.
Yeah, what I thought was, there's so many fascinating parts to this, is that you have been convicted, you're now sent to Angola, you're put in, I guess it's called CCR, is that
Yes,
like death row?
Yes. Yeah, closed cell restriction, yes.
Closed cell restriction, you put there. And almost immediately, you have other prisoners reaching out to you and saying, Gary, you have to start telling your story. You have to start kind of like weaponizing your story here so you can get out of this prison. So there's two parts to that. One is that you met some amazing men in prison, which I found fascinating. And two, they helped you at that time to actually start telling the story. So how did that come together?
Just imagine walking in a place where you don't know anybody, especially Angola, where you don't heard so much terrifying things that's about the prison. And so you already entering with a mindset that the men there are dangerous and that no one dare to help you under no circumstances because it is a violent place. But when I was put on death row and having men coming out their cell every hour, stopping by your cell, introducing themselves, and telling you who they are and what they're about. What they did in turn, they humanized themselves. They made it to a point where I can be able to see them as a human being and not as this threat that I done heard so much about the prison itself. All right?
So the fascinating part about that, Gary, is for everybody who lives in this modern world where everything's on your phone, they don't realize what it was like in those days to actually have to write a letter, put it in an envelope, put a stamp on it, mail it. You don't know if anybody's getting anywhere. But to me, this was the start of your journey because now you've got friends.
Yes.
And really, for the first time in your legal journey, people getting behind you, and then you start to build a bigger legal team. But the more fascinating part of the story for me, and there's so many fascinating parts, is you talk about being an angry young man. And if anybody had a right to be angry, it was Gary Tyler. You had the right to be angry in so many different parts of your life. But you decided to not be angry. And that's a part of change that is just so fascinating. I'm stuck on this word fascinating, but that's who you are. Talk us through that. An angry young man decides it's time to not be angry anymore. It's time to move on.
Anger tends to shut an individual down to where you only see so much your side and you feel as though you're the only one that's suffering in the world and there's nobody can tell you anything otherwise. You don't become empathetic to anyone's concern or worries because you become self-centered. And but one thing about knowledge and awareness is that it's like a tool that you can use to fix things. And the more I became aware of things and educated about the system itself, and that I'm not the only one have been through a tragic, you understand, you can say situation, that you go to putting yourself in other people's shoes about what they're going through, and they tell you how they were able to survive their ordeal. And I was looking at the men that are around me, how they were bitter and angry. And I didn't like that. I didn't like what I saw. And I started seeing those traces in myself as though like by them acting the way they're acting, then I was beginning to validate their action. Not knowing at the same time, I was allowing myself to transform into the very thing that I was so much afraid of when I first went to prison. very volatile, having a very volatile, attitude about things and angry. So I didn't like that. And I didn't like the things that I was hearing myself saying and doing. And I felt that I needed to change because other guys themselves were beginning to, expressing concern about the things that I was, about the things that I was saying, because I became not only angry, but I became somewhat withdrawn from everybody, from the very guys who was helping me. I became, was getting agitated, to the point where I didn't want to be bothered. But these guys are the ones who took their time to help me through that, march through all that anger and bitterness. And I realized that I need to start the healing. And the only way for me to do that, I have to start forgiving people along with myself, allowing myself to become, you could say, of losing my humanity and not listening to other people, especially what the young kids were saying, what they've been through and how they was threatened and how they was treated. Because at first, I looked at it was complete betrayal, and that they were just, what they were saying, it was a lie. It's what they did to me that hurt it, because I felt that they lied on me and everything else. So I started, stop being self-centered and start listening to people and going over things. And then that's when I realized, man, that those who got up on the witness stand and lied on me, they was coerced. They was forced against their will. And it was evident that they regretted and they felt sorry, because I was getting letters from them. I was getting messages from our family about how sorry they were behind what they did. And that kind of like put me on a journey of forgiving people by forgiving myself for being angry with them and not understanding what they went through, because I know what I went through. So if they were able to do what they did to me, of course they'll do them the same thing under threats.
Well, the fact that you were able to start seeing all this and internalize it and then make this decision to move on. I know you had befriended another prisoner, was it Louis Singleton, and you said, I don't want to go in that direction. But you also got some advice, which is some of the most simplest advice ever, and it made a big difference in your life. You were maturing, you were growing, you were becoming respected, but someone took you aside and said, Gary, you have to smile.
Oh, yes. And although I went to, I was forgiving, but I was still missing out on very important parts of myself, personality. Because as a young kid, there are pictures of me while I'm smiling. All right? A happy little kid, always had a nice smile. And I lost that. Because I felt that was
and to your credit, you fought hard and you got it back. And another thing that you write about is Nelson Mandela, and the way he conducted his life became important to you.
Yes. Those instances where it helped me, it's helped falsify my journey of resalvaging my humanity by being in such inhumane conditions, to where, yes, I start paying attention to a whole lot of people. And I was saying, now, here's an individual. See, this what really got me was that I was reading stories about other people, what they went through, and how they were overcame those challenges in their lives. And when they had one time felt that they had lost their humanity, that they could never feel empathetic toward other people. But they were able to recover from that by caring for other people. And I think that was one of the main things why I became a hospice volunteer.
And let's go there in a second, because you now have overcome your anger, and you go on a couple of very important journeys within the context of this. One is you decide you're going to get an education, and you had to fight for that education. Tell us why they didn't want to educate you, and what you had to do to overcome the right to get educated.
Well, when I realized that I was kind of like educationally challenged, because there was a lot of things that these guys were saying, words that they were using, the books that they was introducing me to, and these words, these words was like, I mean, they were big words that I never heard before in my life. And although these guys were taking their time to help me, gave me a dictionary, taught me how to use a dictionary, but I felt that I was missing out on the fundamentals of my education, and I wanted to pursue that. And when I contacted the administration about getting my GED, their response was that the prison wasn't in the business of educating anyone that was condemned to die. As though saying that the pursuit of my education was not important to the system. So that's the last thing I should be focusing on. And I felt slighted by that. But although that they denied me, I pursued my education because those guys around me, they helped me while I was there. But I knew one thing, that under the circumstances, it was important that I get a GED. You understand? That I continue to educate myself, because the guys themselves, they were educating me politically. But fundamentally, there were still component parts that was missing in my educational endeavors. So when I got out of the cells, I took and wrote the educational department again about getting in GED school. And their response was that I had a life sentence, and that they were not, it was a waste of taxpayers' money to educate anyone that would never get out of prison.
But you overcame that, and not only did you overcome that, you then went on to get training in art and some printing and some other skills that became very valuable to you later in life.
Right. You know, and thanks to thanks to those who heard my cries, they put me in you could say, an academic school. And when I got my GED, well, you know, I was in the process of getting my GED. I went up before the pardon board, and it went up before Governor Buddy Roma. And in my pursuit of getting my education, that was the very thing that the governor used to deny me a pardon, that I didn't have a GED, discounting the fact that I was in academic school at the time.
Right. They don't want you to have a GED. Then the board says you should be pardoned, and then the governor reverses the whole argument. Because one of the things you learn here is you're a pretty damn good politician at this point. You know how to read people. You know how to learn how to read situations, and you know how to look. You know how to look past things to connect the dots. Not many people can get there, and you got there.
Yes, and I knew that despite his denial, I couldn't give up. I had to pursue to get my GED, and not only that, to get whatever educational entities that was available at that time. So after I got my GED, then that's when I got in vocational school, and I took up the you could say the skill of graphic art.
Yeah, Gary, if you'll indulge us, we're going to take a quick break here, and come right back.
Have you ever felt lost in the voting booth? With 518,000 elected officials in the United States, it's no wonder elections are complicated. From local school boards to the presidency, there are so many choices. And that's where Ballotpedia comes in, your one trusted source, because the only unknown on your ballot should be who gets your vote. Our sample ballot lookup tool shows you exactly who and what will be on your ballot. Just enter your address, select your upcoming election, and prepare to vote informed. You can even save your favorites and print your completed sample ballot. With Ballotpedia, vote with confidence and vote informed.
When I saw the long line of cars, I thought there's such a need in the valley. What it feels like when you don't have food is that you've let your family down. I'm Sherry Lee, I'm 62 years old, and I live in Grand Junction, Colorado. We were homeless, and they fed us. We're better off than we've ever been, thanks to the food bank of the Rockies.
Welcome back. We're here with Gary Tyler and the story of an amazing book, Stitching Freedom. So Gary, you now have gotten this education. You fought your way to get there. And
Yes.
a couple, I'm stuck on fascinating. I got to come up with some better adjectives today. Okay, so
Yeah.
you fought your way through the system, and two remarkable events occur, and they're not really just events. One is you become part of the drama club, and later the head of the
Yes.
drama club. Tell us how
Yes.
that happened.
Well, I had a friend, a childhood friend, who was a part of the organization, the drama club, and he told me that the guy Herman Smith, who was the president of the organization, wanted to talk to me, possibly joining his organization. And I happened to go up there and talk to him, and he explained this to me. He said, "Listen," he said that he was expecting to go home, and he wanted to leave the organization in the hands of some good men that he felt that would give guidance to the organization, and that his nephew Patrick would most likely take his place and would I support his nephew. And I told him, well, it depends. But to make, it was a thing where he said he wanted to take and recruit people that he felt that would ensure the survival of the organization. So he said, whenever you have time, I would like for you to come up to some of our meetings. So one Wednesday came, I went up there to the meeting, and what they were doing at the time, they had a public speaking class going on. So the guys got up there and introduced themselves, and then I was called. I got up there and with hesitancy to introduce myself to people. And then I sat down and I started watching these guys performing, doing little skits. And I started having second thoughts that, do I really want to be a part of this? And I realized that in order for me to make progress, that I have to really get involved in organizational activities, really get to know the prison and the prisoners themselves. So I eventually joined the drama club.
But you just turned to the drama club, as you said. The gentleman asked you to join it because he knew you were a leader. He wanted you to help his relative become the head of it, and that was a tough political fight we're not going to cover here. That was a politician, Gary Tyler, had to fight a tough fight to win that one. But then you become the head of the drama club.
Yes.
Not only that, then you start writing plays and producing some fascinating works of art. So this is a story within a story. But now I want to get to the best part of the story. One of the wardens, I believe, comes to you and has seen a passion play in Europe, and they want your group to produce the passion play for the prison, right? And this is not a simple task. This is like a Broadway production. This is
Yes.
right, tens and 20s and hundreds of people involved, and you have to fight the political battles. Give us a little bit about this passion play. It just
Yes.
a terrific accomplishment on your part.
Yes. When I was approached by the warden about the play, and of course I wasn't a part of any religious establishment there in the religious organization. And she told me about she had went to Scotland and she saw this play, the Passion Play, and that and she talked to the head warden. They felt that it could be done in Angola, and she asked me, said, "Do you think that you can do it? Have your guys do it?" So I told her that, Ms. Fontenot, that we basically is a secular organization, and that you have religious organizations here, and that they're more inclined or prepared to do it. And she said, well, one of the reasons that I'm here talking to you is because they're the one that referred me to you. Because when we had the meeting with the religious community, they said it was beyond their approach, that they cannot do it because it was, that they wasn't, you could say, technically inclined to production. So she had asked him, well, then who you think that can do it? My name came up. And she asked him, why do you think that Gary Tyler can do it? Because he got the respect and admiration of the prison population. And that if anybody can do it, he can do it because they would listen to him.
But you, at this point, you don't have the respect of everybody. You have the respect of the wardens. You have the respect of the guards in the prison. You have the respect of all the different layers of the community, and you've taken on this production. Now you decide that you need women in the production, right?
Yes.
Now that was smart. For a lot of reasons that was smart. But you now have to convince them. You have to convince them to let women out of another prison to come and act with men in a play. Now talk about Gary Tyler, the politician, being brilliant. No one but you, Gary, could have gotten that done. No one.
Well, it was a thing. It was a strategy that I thought was going to work to get me out of it. Honestly speaking, but it backfired because my guys, they wanted to do it. So it's a thing where, since they wanted to do it, and when I tried to discourage them from doing it, I thought I had one card left, and that card was I needed women. Because in the play, it had women's in the play, and I just can't see my guys getting up there acting as women, even though they acted as women in productions we did in Angola. You understand? So when I told the warden that, she said, well, you can get the guys to do it. I said, listen, we're not trying to do a kabuki play, So I said, I need women. And, you just imagine the expression on their faces when I mentioned that. And they went back and they discussed about it. And next thing you know, I'm getting a phone call to come to the warden's office about when I want to go to LCIW, the women prison, to audition the women.
And it's more than that, Gary, because again, these men have not been around women other than maybe their families have visited. These women have not been around men, and you have now taken on an incredible task of you're producing a play, but you have to introduce socialization to people that haven't even had socialization for years. I can't imagine how brilliant you had to be to facilitate all this.
Many people that labeled me as a taskmaster when I was in prison, and that when I set my mind to something, I made sure that I accomplish it and get it done. And when I went to interview the women, to audition them, of course, they were kind of like boisterous and felt that they just come off a project where they did a little filming themselves. And when they told me that that they was gonna outdo my men performing, and that they were gonna eat my eat the guys' lunch.
Right.
They kind of like had me believing that these women was tough. These women gonna give my men a hard time. So that's when I told them, I said, listen, I said, I want you women to know I can do this production without you. But I felt that since the attention is always focused on the men prison, and that the women get very little publicity about the accomplishments that they do in prison, I felt it was important to involve you all. So I'm bringing this to you to let you know that this is an opportunity for you, because we're doing something that have never been done before in any prison or any United States, period. That it's just like men, just like men taking the first step on the moon, you know?
And that's my point. That's my point. You have become a brilliant politician. You've become a brilliant director of plays. You're like the puppet master. And then on top of it all, you decide that you can't just hold this play anywhere. It has to be down near a lake where the water is, right? So you have to convince them, actually, we now have to host this and have the production where Gary needs the production. You're a genius. And what you did there is unbelievable. And I wish we could do an hour show on that. In fact, there is a documentary on this passion play. But let's switch back to when you were talking about the hospice. You're in prison, and now there's an AIDS epidemic, right?
Right.
You're also in a prison where, if your facts are correct, 85% of the people that come in don't come out. They die in prison.
Right. Yes.
And a determination has been made that for the sake of human dignity and for the sake of end-of-life care, you need to start a hospice program. So this is another one of your major accomplishments. How does this happen?
Well, when AIDS and HIV hit the prison, we had, there were people that I knew that were dying from the epidemic, at least from the disease. And nobody knew how people was actually getting infected by HIV and AIDS. And Shannon Hagar, she came. She was a nurse at the hospital, and she came to one of our production, and she knew a guy named Crawford, and he wanted to come to the prison and teach the prisoners about HIV and AIDS, about prevention. So she asked me. She said, "Would you like to go to the training?" I told her yes. I said, "What about possibly having my organization go through it?" She said, "Yeah, that's possible." So we went to basically a 6 week training about HIV and AIDS. And on top of that, we decided there's an international HIV and AIDS conference they're going to be holding in Angola. So the drama club was asked to perform a production. So what I did in turn, I told the guys, I said, "Listen, we have been invited to do a production at the conference." I said, "We need to have something pertaining to HIV and AIDS." So we collectively got together, and we came up with HIV and AIDS play, and I went through it. I screenlined it, make sure that the facts of it was right and stuff like that, and shorten it up. And when that day came, my guys performed, and everybody loved it. They loved the production. And then there was 2 ladies, Carol Evans and Rhonda Hogarth, as well as Jamie Boudreaux. They approached me about the possibility of establishing a hospice program. And I told them, well, it's possible, but you would have to most likely talk to the head warden. And they went to talk to the warden, and the warden thought it was a great idea. So the warden McFadder, in which case he was an assistant warden, he called a few of the club heads and told us that we have been designated as being the first hospice training corps. So we took the training. It was about 12 of us. We took the training, and from there, we shared our ideas about how we was going to go by of implementing it, and when they opened a ward up for the for the patients, I got my first patient, and as time went on, it was a thing about how could we go by of raising funds for the program.
Yeah, you set up the hospice program. You personally are involved, and you were dealing with probably up to 100 prisoners at their end of life ritual and taking care of them. I know how tough that had to be.
Yeah.
But you also then wanted to start raising money, and this is where the world of quilts comes to Gary Tyler. So how does that happen?
Well, the idea came about how we going to go about raising funds for the organization, hospice. And God was coming up with all kind of ideas. And then it was drawn out, why don't we make quilts? Because the first corps of guys who was in the training, at the end, we all made a patch quilt together. And a guy named Animal, Ted Durden, he sewed it up. Because he had a sewing machine. And him and the lady from the streets, they all sewed it together. And when the idea came up, I, along with other people, felt, well, that's a good idea. Let's make the quilts. But it wasn't my intention to be a quilter at all. I thought it was a good idea. All right. So the guys start making the quilts, and they start making quilts to sell. Then we need a venue. How are we gonna sell them? So we could sell them in the visiting shade. What about possibly sell them out in the rodeo? So
right, because there's twice a year there's a prison rodeo, and it's a big event, and you're now going to work around the rodeo and sell your quilts and make money.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So by me working on a paint crew, I was able to talk to the wards about building a concession for the hospice. So built a concession for the hospice to make quilts. So the guys, an unfortunate incident happened at the hospital. So they shut the quilting shop down. But the guys needed a place to stay because at the time I was operating the wheelchair and bed repair shop in the gym.
Just one more little thing you do on the side in prison, right? As if you don't have enough to do.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, I was repairing. I mean, I did all kinds of things when I was there. So the guys needed some room, so I told them come on down and made room for them. And the rodeo was fast approaching, and they asked me to help, and I was coming up with all kinds of excuses about why I couldn't do it because I was involved in. Or mainly because, I had an image I felt that I had to maintain. And of course, no, not me doing quilting. No, not Gary, because the guys already questioned me about why did I cut the dreads out of my, from my head, because they felt that I was going through some changes. Man, you cut your dreads out and all that stuff there. You could have talked to me, stuff like that. So I felt that if they found out that I was making quilts, then they're going to be wondering, man, that's a feminine thing to do in prison. Why are you doing this? So,
yeah, you're getting soft on these guys. Is that what's going on?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have this. We have this guy Gary Tyler, and he has gone to prison as an angry young man. He has overcome his anger. He has gotten an education. He has learned printing. He's learned quilting. He has become the head of a drama club. He's produced a passion play. He has seen a need for hospice care. He's done all these amazing things. That's why people have to read your book, Gary, because this story, we couldn't make up this story. We could not make up Gary Tyler. But now Gary Tyler gets out of prison.
Yes.
Right? And he's just, and
Right.
I don't know how much movies you ever got to watch. There is this very famous movie that won an award, The Shawshank Redemption. And one of the things they stress is people become institutionalized and then they get out of prison and they're kind of lost. And my sense is you had a strong network of people that had recognized
Right.
your talents at that point, but you were still lost when you got out of prison. How did you fight your way through that?
Well, it was like it was a good thing that I had a support base. First of all, when I got out, remember I went to prison when I was 16 years old. I fell up under the auspices of my family. They took care of me, so I didn't know anything about work, paying rent, paying bills. I didn't know anything about that. So when I got out, it was like I had to live my life all over again from that 16-year-old who now starting as a 57-year-old man to get his life together. So, but one thing that I always promised myself that when I get out, I wanted to work with prevention, because in prison I worked with reentry, help guys prepare themselves to reenter back into society. And I wanted to work with with prevention, because I heard many guys told me, say, Unc, if you were out there, I doubt very seriously I'd be where I'm at now, because the time you take with me in this prison, I knew one thing, that, man, if I would have had someone like you out there, I wouldn't have done the things that I did to come to prison. So right there, it resonated with me that these guys were saying, man, that there was something missing out there in the community. Right. So I felt that when I get out, I wanted to be able to, implant myself where I could work with young people. So when I got the job at SPY, Safe Place for Youth, right, that enabled me out there in Venice to work with young people. So, and that's, I'll go on.
So no, and you did that for a long time.
Yes.
You mentioned this 16-year-old, and one of the questions I've been thinking about is, and again, I'm going to go back to Shawshank Redemption. There's this very famous scene with Morgan Freeman where he's going to, before the parole board, and he says, I want to talk to that young man. I want to deal with him. Have you ever thought about what might have become of Gary Tyler if you hadn't been on the bus that day and someone hadn't gotten killed and you hadn't been on trial? What do you think would have happened to that Gary Tyler? Because that Gary Tyler's life wasn't a day at the beach already. You had been institutionalized. You had just gotten kicked out of school. Do you think there was a path for that 16-year-old Gary Tyler?
Anything would have been possible, but I reflect back on the people that I left behind and how their lives turned out, because when I went to prison, I missed the time of, you could say, gang violence in the 80s, drugs, and all that stuff there. And I know people who have lost their lives by gang violence, lost their lives through drugs, and could that possibly could have been me? Or could I have had a successful life? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? But I do know one thing, that despite what happened to me, I was able to be successful under the conditions that I was under. I was able to overcome the odds of prison life and become the best that I could be under those circumstances.
No, you definitely did. And in the book, let me see in the book you say, I also want people to know that despite what an individual's been through, they can come out of a dreadful situation whole and not be broken or bitter. If they can find community, engage in meaningful activities, and stay focused on the truth, on what is right and just. Don't think those 40-plus years I spent in Angola were a waste. So that's what I was thinking. You just used the word there. It's almost as if you went on this detour, and you went down a dark road, but you came out the back end in a good place. I'm just wondering if you ever think that as torturous and as inhumane the system was to you and everything you went through, was this actually the right path for Gary Tyler? And you came out into the light, and you had this light on the back end. You're a teacher, you're an artist, you're accomplished, you've just written a book. almost as if, was this meant to be? And is this where Gary Tyler was meant to be all along?
And I feel that was part of my destiny, because what if it wouldn't have happened? What if it didn't happen? People ask me, if you had a chance to live your life all over, and my response was, after everything I've been through, no. Because through my journey, I met wonderful people. I met people that I definitely would like to remember for the rest of my life. People who are responsible for me being where I'm at today. And for me to relive my life all over, who to say that I would live to be 57 years old? Because there's so much things that's happening out in society that I probably would have been victimized behind something like that. So I feel that despite the things that happened to me so dreadfully, that it humbled me. It made me someone that appreciate life, and that I embraced what happened to me, and I felt that it happened for a reason. And the reason is for me to share my story with other people, to let them know that despite whatever an individual can go through, look through history, how people was able to overcome, the horrors in their lives and came out on the best end of everything. And I feel that's what happened to me, that I came out on the worst. I came out better and as a humble man. And I have a profound appreciation of life, because I never thought that I would have survived at the time the things that happened to me, but I did.
Well, Gary, thank you for your time. You said you've been out to Aspen before. Come out again. Let's get a big steak dinner somewhere. Or maybe when I'm in LA, we'll get a big steak dinner. We'll talk some more, because I don't see anybody can interview you for under 7 hours. I mean, it's an endless, fantastic story. What I'm going to do now is thank you for being with me here today. I'm going to turn to this other camera, and I'm going to sell some books for you right now. So let's do that. So
all right,
the book is Stitching Freedom by Gary Tyler. It's an important book, and Gary was gracious to us today. We're going to do a half-hour interview. I think we've done an hour interview, if not more than that at this point. We'll get those editors together and figure out how to make this into a 1-hour spectacular program. Get yourself into the life of Gary Tyler. There's a lot of ways to do it. Start with his book, but I want you to go past the book, because Gary Tyler's now been out of prison for 10 years. And as he mentioned, he was part of SPY, Safe Place for Youth. Take a look at something like that. Gary's fighting today for prisoners' rights, to make prisons safer places and better places for people in tough situations. He's become a fighter for a lot of different causes. So get the book, get into the life of Gary Tyler, and then say to yourself, how can I find my inner Gary Tyler? How do I grow? How do I mature? How do I find the best way to see things in people? That's not the world we're living in today. People aren't finding the best way to see things in people. That's the strong message from today. And I hope you find a way to get there. And we all owe a bit of gratitude to Gary Tyler. And Gary, I want to say thank you.
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate you inviting me.
Gary, you made a lot of work for my technical team here. We got a lot of editing work to do. And Shida is going to be very upset. You told her to be upset with me, not you, because I got a feeling you love telling your story because it's an amazing story to tell. She only wanted you to give me 30 minutes. Tell her it's my fault, and we're going to put together a great show for you, and we're going to help you sell some books.
But Stephen, I feel that I'm a free man now, so I can accept the blame.
Yeah, do you ever?
I think that this was worthy of it.
Do you ever get together with that district attorney from Louisiana who finally stepped up and made this happen for you, or you and he have a relationship at all anywhere along the way?
Well, I mean, since I've been out, we haven't been in communication with each other, but he's quite familiar, or at least quite aware of the things that I've been doing since I've been out. But I think after this book here, him and I will be getting together soon.
All right. Well, I hope I can find some time to either meet you when you're in Aspen or out in L.A. Loved your story, and I wish you all the best. Sell 1 million books. Sell 10 million books.
All right. Yeah, give me a call when you're out here. When I'm out there, I'm going to definitely get in contact with you.
Will do. Stay well, young man.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right,
you, brother.
take care.
You have a wonderful weekend.
You too. And as always, thank you for watching. Catch us next time on another episode of Come to Think of It.